Hello, everyone. Welcome to Social Saturdays. I'm Luciana Garcia, an empowerment modern rock singer, songwriter, and performer. And series of interviews that I call Social Saturdays is a place where every week I interview someone on a topic that I believe can assist our community in getting through these crazy times of pandemic and social unrest. This week, we are changing things up a bit. I usually interview an expert on a specific topic, but today I wanted to interview my dear friend, the powerful and beautiful Paige Clarke. I have seen Paige thrive tremendously throughout everything that's going on, and I don't know, she has been growing and expanding in a way that's very inspiring to me. So I wanted to talk to her about holistic health, and I know she is very interested in women's health as well, and holistic health in general. And I just wanted to get her tips and new perspectives on what she's been up to, so that we can all expand and grow like Paige. All right, Paige, how are you? How's your week been?
So good. And Luciana, thank you so much for that, just your voice. And I'm really thankful and humbled that you asked me to just be a part of this, because definitely not an expert, definitely just like, a little sprout trying to figure it out. But I'm really excited to be able to just like share our voice together and just like have an exploratory conversation.
Yeah,
So,
I sprout trying to figure it out. Like it rhymes. I love that. I love that so much.
yep.
Um, that's yeah, exactly. I feel like every time we have conversations, like I become I get uplifted somehow. So I wanted to share one of our conversations with the world. I guess.
Yep. All right, here we are. It's
Yeah,
reciprocal. So thank
let's
you.
do it. So let's go into all right. So can you well, by holistic health, we understand holistic health as the health of our minds, bodies, and souls.
Mhm.
So I kind of divided, like, I want to go into body first. Can you tell us a little bit about the science of her health class that you were building for Women X?
Yes, yes, absolutely. So, as a fellow Women Xer, I think for those that it's like your first time listening, Women X is just this beautiful, beautiful community that is giving voices and creating safe spaces for women or what people who identify as female to just be, right? And I think that in and of itself is really powerful. And so through this lens, it's a series of events and courses and a lot of other different events where we can come together through that lens and really explore topics like things that that impact people in general, just as a whole: environment, safety, economics, social injustices, politics, just like what's happening in the world. And with all of that comes like a lot of stress when I think you're a person and then you start to narrow that down to specific identities. And we identify as women and just thinking about what that means for us and how do we hold space. And so the idea of being able to combine mind, body, spirit, and look at that through the lens of her health, right? Like our health. How do we explore that and how do we talk about it? And so it's actually broken down into a 3-part series: her mind, her body, and her power. And this first series is really dedicated to how we learn, because I think that first journey into self and exploring how do our minds work? How have I interpreted the world up to this point? How has trauma impacted my decisions? What is my memory like? What do I remember? What don't I remember? And how did that come to be? And so the class itself is structured around like formal learning, which is some online classes or traditional online classes just as like a backbone, because there's a lot of great research out there. And then informal learning, so if you think about like there's incredible podcasts out there and TEDx circles and healing circles and a lot of other things. And then
Mm-hmm.
when you think about what is shared between a dynamic of a group with bringing a small group of women together, being able to have that type of community dialogue, it just enriches the whole experience. And so that's what that class is really like dedicated to. At least the first part is how our minds work. How can we talk about what it's like to be a woman? And like if you're someone, for example, that doesn't sleep very well, how does that impact your sleep? when you
Mm-hmm.
dissect it from a male and female perspective, like what keeps a woman up at night versus what keeps a man up at night, right?
Yeah.
Like those types of conversations in the classroom would be really dynamic and different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very interesting. Very interesting, and I find that there's a collective heaviness that I've been like sensing these past like few not few months. Oh, like I feel like I've sensed it always, but I'm aware of it and can identify it these past few months of like being a woman and in a patriarchal world.
Yeah.
Um, and how all the women around me have been impacted somehow, and I find myself to be on, like, if I were to see it as a spectrum to like
Mm-hmm.
how much women have suffered from being born into a patriarchal world, like I find myself to be pretty much on the privileged side. um and it's still heavy, like, and
Yeah.
there's a lot to like weed out. So I love that you're creating the space to do that, you know?
Thank you. I just want to have like everyone feel empowered to create these spaces like you're doing it, right? And
Mm-hmm.
like you're able to facilitate it in so many different ways to open dialogue around these conversations. And when you say collective heaviness, like, oh, like yes, like everyone feels that here in the heart.
Yeah,
And I think like I've been able to say like, yes, there's this collective heaviness and the opportunity is collective healing, which is
definitely.
like that shared experience alone, I think like makes 2020 pretty special.
That's very true. That's very true. Somehow it is uniting. Like we understand what each other is going through,
Yeah.
which is kind of new for a lot of people. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's amazing. What are some things that we can do to improve our physical health? Like I know this is different for everybody, but I want to hear your take. Like what are some things that and practices that you've incorporated to improve your body's health and look after your body and take care of it and see it as a temple, the temple that it is?
Yeah. I love that you asked that question because it is different for everybody. And like, yes, our body is a temple and it's a vehicle and a vessel and all these things. And when I think about it in terms of what do I do, like there's some things I've embarked on this year that are a little different. Like I just got my yoga teacher certification, which I was an incredible journey, not just for the physical practice, but because yoga is mind, body, and spirit. And the yogic philosophy is deeply rooted in tradition and ancestry and so many things that are really enriching when you just think about what do I think about when I'm actually taking care of my body.
Mm-hmm.
And I think beyond that, like what I try to do for my physical body is even just holding space to journey inward. And we're often like super impulsive and we make fear-based decisions. And sometimes that even comes out in our physical presence, right? Like eating or like over exercising and then not exercising and just like not knowing like what my kneecap feels like that sounds really silly, but in yoga it's just like what does your kneecap feel like? You're like I've never thought of that before.
Yeah.
Right, like scratch your elbow and you're like okay, yeah, that does feel a little like I needed that itch, you know.
Yeah.
You apply that as a body scan and it's really powerful. So I've been holding space for my story and how do I become more relational to myself, how do I become more relationship to or relational to each other and to the earth, and how do I not take that responsibility, because responsibility manifests itself physically and it's heavy and that
Mm.
impacts my body. So I think like there's enough social pressure on us to think about what we look like physically. I want to know how I feel and how I've come to feel that way and hold space for that level of Paige. So
Yeah.
I answer your question, maybe not, but I've been trying to not think about like, you know, people have been talking about the quarantine 15 and there's a bazillion workout routines, like all these things, which is really
Yeah.
beautiful. And like those decisions like happen, I think, after you're like, where do I feel safe and what do I want to work on and what does my body actually need?
Yeah. No, but I really like your answer because it's applicable to everybody. It's not, you didn't say this specific food, this specific diet, and this specific workout. You talked about it from a very universal point of view, which is holding space and listening.
Listening, yes.
Yes, you have talked about listening to your body, and I think that is so important. And just like, yeah, it's something I've been learning a lot about during quarantine, because I used to go to a gym and just do whatever in the gym and kind of have a goal for my
Yeah.
body that was a social construct, for
Yes.
sure. And during quarantine, maybe not being out in the world seeing the things that feed this construct of I have to have a flat stomach and like a thigh gap and like all these things that in the end, like if I had a flat stomach, I'd be miserable because like I love food. Like, you know, like I can't, you know, like, so I feel like being disconnected from those things. I I started working out, like following some like YouTube workouts,
Mm-hmm.
and I learned how to listen to my body, like very in a very physical but very present
Yeah.
way in doing those workouts. Just following the right instructors that are like there for you to feel like their purpose is that their client feels good, not that their client looks a certain way.
Right.
And it's been an interesting exploration for me, just to see like when I'm like doing a push up, like really be centered in like my baby biceps
Yes.
and hear, like, you know, and I'm like, oh yeah. Oh my god.
Yeah.
um you touched up on a very interesting point that I would like to dive deeper into, which is your story.
Mm.
um how can you tell us about the how you came about, and I know we kind of discovered this together, so that's why I want to get into it too,
Yeah.
the importance of your story. How, like, the talk to me about how we discovered that our stories are important and that you don't have to be like famous or like some celebrity that changed the world for your story to be important and have to be told by you.
Oh my gosh. Oh, what a powerful question. Because like even thinking about that experience that we shared, like I get a little teary-eyed. Like there was, it's so okay and giving ourselves permission to tell our story. And it is unbelievable like how we don't vocalize our truth and our memory. And there's this class I was taking, it's called it's from Seven Generations, it's out of the Bay Area. And she talks about, like, she's an elder, like her name is Norma, and like when she speaks, it's wisdom of the ages, right? Like she just has such a powerful voice. And she talks about like the long arc is 120 years previous to us and 120 years in future us, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that there's these different generations that exist within that. And then when you go beyond that into like the memory, there's this idea of cellular memory. And I think like we all would agree that our cells have memory, right? Like we
Mm-hmm.
replenish all the time, and like our bodies exist in ways that we don't tell them to exist. They just exist. But if you think about that existence as being a memory, that's really powerful. Like our bodies are remembering who we've been for centuries as human beings. Beyond that, they're also remembering like how our bodies work with water and work with heat and fire and wind and that kind of thing. And when you think about like all of those elements together, like our story is like today, and also like and what am I to say, like our ancestors' stories, right? And it's hundreds of thousands of years old. And if we took the time to listen to that story and get to know it and remember who we are, like we are deep. And like we exist at this superficial level of like, I'm not good enough for Instagram. I'm not good enough to like tell my story. I'm not worthy. I'm not valued, especially women. And like that is not true. Like each one of us have such a unique perspective to like offer to the world. And I think when I like reflect back on not 120 years, but just like the 30 I've been alive, I'm like, okay, what do I remember? What do I value? What was I fearful of? What was I confident in? When did I lose my confidence? When did I like speak from a place of insecurity? When did I decide I wanted to learn? When did I laugh? Like those things are really important because they help us to connect with other people because we are our own story. And so
Yeah.
I think like in this moment, and we talked about this in class too, like we're so self-absorbed and individualistic that like it's hard to be communal because we've been so divisive just within ourselves, like not appreciating ourselves. So
Yeah.
if we love our story and we love ourselves, it's so much easier. And this is cliche, of course, like to love other people and have other people love us.
Yeah.
So I want to ask everybody their story all the time and just like ask them questions and lead with curiosity and wonder and all the above. And I know I just rambled on, but like the power of
No, that's what we're here to listen to you ramble on. So please continue.
okay, I just love everyone's story and I want to get to know it,
Yeah.
right? Like what if we
Yeah.
all wanted to get to know ourselves and in turn want to get to know another person, and like
Yeah.
that's what makes us human.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we were talking the kind of situation we were talking about earlier was, for those of you listening, in the Women X class that Paige and I met in, our final project was to tell our stories
Mhm.
from beginning to like today. And
Yeah.
so every student, we met for just to listen to Paige's story once, then only to listen to my story. And so same thing with the other students. And it was such a powerful thing. And I remember it was very healing for me to write it out, write it all out. All the many things I thought I was completely over, like I was not, and now I feel like I am. Like I really, it was very healing for me to look at it so like deeply, and then to share it and have others share their story with me. And I'm like, I also realized when we were doing that project, like our stories are really important. Like I said earlier, like Paige, you just for existing, you've influenced so many people. And so it's, it's not that it's just about the people you've influenced, but like we don't really see that as often. And like there's mothers, like there's
Yeah.
humans that have created other humans,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that's crazy to me.
I
So
know.
like it's important that we are vocal and appreciative of our stories, and we see them and tell them, and write them or archive them in some whatever way works for us,
I
I
love
think.
And the beauty about like that storytelling was like everyone was in awe of the other person's story, right? It wasn't like one was better than another or one was like more traumatic than another or had
Yeah.
etc. Like everyone's story was just so beautiful because like we were the ones telling it.
Yeah.
Like that's it. It was
Yeah.
just like it was the power behind it too. Like everyone's story had a magical element of awe to it.
Definitely.
We are.
Definitely. I feel like we really experienced the beauty of diversity and how there's no like superior or inferior when
Mm-hmm.
we're really expressing ourselves, because we
Yeah.
are all such different people, the students in that class,
Yeah.
like very very different people. But there's like there was no like hierarchy, is that how you pronounce that word? Okay, there's no hierarchy,
Yeah.
right? When it's truly us just expressing, we're just different, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And I feel
Absolutely.
like that applies to so many things in life in general.
Agreed, agreed. Like, and that's the important part of like that practice of how does it translate and transfer, and how are we leveraging what we felt and what we knew with our hearts to lead with that into the next decision.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. All right, so on that note, let's go into spirit. Talk to me about spirit guides and what is your experience and how has it come forward for you? I know you are very connected with spirit guides, and so am I, and so I really want us to discuss this topic.
I know, I knew your face was gonna light up when you were like spirit guides,
Yay! they're
right?
like
Like,
my they're like my spiritual friends. Like we hang out, we
yeah,
talk,
we talk. I know we
we
laugh,
catch up.
we catch up. Yeah, that's it. That's what spirit guides are.
Basically.
Passionate souls that like take care of us, and I think that they take many shapes and many forms. And for me, I first got introduced to like spirit guides as a very young child, and not because of any purpose besides the fact that I was just open. And due to like the nature of my story, like I didn't really have any, or I didn't have a religious construct at all. and my parents weren't really around either, and so I was kind of just free to be me. Like no one was telling me how to be, and like I like that freedom and independency,
or what to believe in either,
or what to believe in. Yes,
mm-hmm.
exactly. So there was like that complete freedom of independency, and of course we can dramatize like the trauma that's associated with like a child not really having like parents being present. At the same time, as an adult, I like look back at that and I'm like, wow, I'm so thankful that like I was never really alone. Like I
Mm.
always had a spirit guide or multiple with me. So when you think about little kids and they have like imaginary friends, or they play with like animals, or they talk to people, or they see things, like that is just them being open to what other dimensions there exist, right? Like we are
Mm.
in the physical world, and like whether you believe in what kind of religion like you follow or not, I think that there's this sense of other, and it's a beautiful sense of other, because it's this idea that there's different dimensions out there, and there's angels, and there are people who have passed that like still maintain contact with us. There's people we've never known but like feel deeply connected to, that somehow get in contact with us. There's mythical creatures. Like there's this whole world of imagination, because it is of us, and us is of spirit, and that can take the form of anything. And I think I think that people are like, well, how do I find my spirit guide? And I'm like, well, I think you have one. Like maybe just try to be open to being able to recognize like what your spirit guide is. And I think that is like really powerful too, because people tend to take it to the like the haves and the have nots, or like I'm open or not open, or like that's for special people, and not realizing that like everybody is special in the center of who they are, and everybody has guides, and like everyone is able to like access this like deep love and appreciation and wisdom in people or beings or things that are just trying to guide us to our life's purpose. And that sounds really like but like don't we have a purpose? Like someone has a purpose, right? And like facilitating music, and it might be someone we don't know or someone we admire. Like your spirit guides are amazing. I love your story.
My spirit guides are huh?
I said mine's a wolf, by the way. I never mentioned what mine was. Like as a child, mine was like a wolf. I talked to my wolf all the time, and it with me. And then I've since met new ones.
That was so interesting to me, that the way your spirit guides have come forth for you is very different than the way they've come forth for me. Like you've talked to us a little bit about how you've contacted, or they've contacted you. If you're comfortable, of course.
Yeah, no, great question. I should have went into that. I went on like, what are spirit guides? So mine
that was the first part of the question, so you're good.
So my wolf, like when I remember like the moment I was like 5, and like I had this wolf that like appeared by my side, and it was in a moment when I needed something. Like I was in an unsafe situation, and there was like trauma being created, and I needed help. And as a 5-year-old, I probably couldn't have like I wasn't saying all those things at that time, right? Like in reflection, that's what it was. And there's this wolf that just like came and like was there for me. And like wolves in nature are like incredibly protective and independent and incredibly loyal. And that ever since that day, I remember that day, like I was able to just kind of like call on him. Like he would just like appear. And maybe I was always like a little off as a child, and I like loved it, but I had like these beings that I would, you know, hang out with while I was outside. And like I've always been a writer, and I would write, and like I think I would hear different things. And so in real life I can't hear anything at all. In my spiritual life, when I like access it via writing or something else, I hear lots of messages. Like I just feel like it's my own voice. People are like, you hear voices? I'm like, well, it's like my voice, but I know it's not me talking. And people would say that's intuition, right? And so like I was just always listening to my intuition and like these guides. As life progresses, fast forward to adulthood, and I'm still open and able to kind of like access this intuition. And since I've been holding space for myself and like really developing a practice of listening, it's through meditation, it's through writing, it's through talking to people and being able to just kind of like open that sense of self. And it's through continuing to be creative in my own ways. I'm by no means an artist or anything like that, but like my sense of visualization is really strong. So if I'm meditating and I can visualize, you know, being by the water and asking for help making a decision, something appears, like people, beings, water, like something will like help me with that
Mm-hmm.
decision. And I
Yeah.
think that's really powerful, right? It's like how you decide to access it.
Yeah.
So recognize it, because I think some people go in looking for something very specific. Like, I think my spirit guide is going to be this like tribal leader, or I think it's going to look like this male or this blah blah blah. And like, maybe that's not for you in this moment.
Mm.
And I think that's hard for people to kind of like really understand the listening aspect of that too.
Yeah.
You get to dictate what your guides are.
Yeah. You bring up something very important, the listening. Yeah, my experience with guides came definitely a lot later in life. I just started reading a lot of books on spirituality and personal growth, and this author, Gabrielle Bernstein, explained what spirit guides were and what they have done for her, and how supported she feels. And I'm like, huh. And since then, I started writing, like, actually, like, I didn't say, like, okay, I want to talk to my spirit guides now. Um, but I was writing, like, on a notebook, like, I need help. Like, I was like, dear universe, like, I can't handle this by myself. I'm losing my mind here.
Yes.
I need your support. Like, I need your support, like, how can you support me?
Yeah.
And then, like, I just kind of, my mind just kind of silenced, and I start, like, my writing gets really crazy and different, and I just, like, get different messages of whatever it is I need support with, and just guidance, and it's all on paper. So, which is good, because then I can go back and read on it. Although
Yeah.
sometimes, the writing's way too messy, but, like, I feel like that's for a specific reason, because it was, like, that moment, um,
Mhm.
and I don't need to, like, obsess over whatever they said. But yeah, spirit guides are definitely, like, or many times I've been, like, just stressing about something, and I'm like, spirit guides, support me, and I just feel supported.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not like a concrete action, although most of the time it is, like the whole writing thing.
Mm-hmm.
um and it just, yeah, it's just very interesting, and it's been very healing for me.
Yeah.
um yeah, I never really believed that what we can see in the physical world is everything there is. Like, I know it to be true now, but it always made sense for me that our five senses can't be able to absorb the entire reality,
Mm-hmm.
like, it's way too simple. I don't I was always like, there's gotta be something else, like something beyond, like, this.
That, and like, how does this ecosystem exist in such perfect harmony and balance, right? Like,
Mm,
literally, it just keeps recreating itself over hundreds of millions of years. And how could that knowledge be lost? Like, I
mm,
don't think like that goes away. I think
mm-hmm,
that like, can absolutely transform. And like, I think that like we believe that we can transform. And someone, I was watching something, it was talking about quantum physics, and most of the time people say quantum physics and like your eyes glaze over and you're like, what? But she just said it so simply to me, where I was just like, that makes sense. She's like, quantum physics is just saying that there's something beyond the physical, like that basically energy, matter makes up everything, and that can be transmuted and translated, and it can take form in any existence. That's what quantum
mm-hmm.
physics is. And I was like, oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah, I
it's
feel
just
like that's a very possible explanation.
like, it's just energy, right? And like, if it's
Yeah.
just energy could be anything and anywhere in any time frame.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And talking about energy, I feel like that's the perfect pathway to go into our minds, because in my own experience, like, my mind forces tries to force energy a lot sometimes. So I have been finding the balance between being gentle with myself when it starts to race
Mm-hmm.
without letting it keep me in like a puddle of poison, you know?
Yikes. Yeah.
So it's like to what point do I let it happen and accept it, but is that encouraging it, you
Yeah.
know? So
Yeah.
what are some ways in which you find peace of mind?
Yeah. It's a really, yeah, when you put it, you're so poetic. Clearly a songwriter.
I've been writing a lot of poetry and reading a lot of Maya Angelou too, so maybe that's why I'm talking all like in verse and stuff.
No, I like it. I think like the analogies you use are like very relatable, and you're
Thank
like,
you.
yes, I can picture that, right? Like I get
Thank
it.
you.
I feel that. How do I find peace of mind? I think that I've been contemplating a lot, like this idea of just, it's not even an idea, it's true. Thoughts create chemicals. So with that in mind, it's like thinking about how powerful this is and how it can literally impact everything else that I'm doing or thinking or saying or being or breathing even. And just being like gentle with that thought too, that like thoughts also create like happy chemicals too, right? Like it goes both ways. And I think immediately when we think about like how do I find peace of mind or how do I take care of myself, we like hyper focus on all the things that are negative or that we feel negative towards or that we have a negative attachment to.
Yeah.
And I think that's much different than kind of letting go of like that ego, because I think
Mm-hmm.
ego also prevents us from having peace of mind, and that can be really destructive. And there's positive and negative ego, and how do we stay in the positive ego side so that we can just like let go of that sense of, I used like responsibility before, but like responsibility.
Yeah.
And it's really turbulent out there, like our lives are turbulent, and then like you think about all the external forces and it's like it's wild, right? Like we're in a storm all the time. So I really think a lot about just like sitting and resetting and like remaining anchored but not stuck,
Mm-hmm.
and finding that groundedness. Because like if I'm in my mind all the time, right, and I'm a windy or airy person, they say, I think they mean flaky. I'm not flaky, I promise. Just a little up here that I have to find grounding and figure out how
I can
to.
speak to that though. Paige is not a flaky person at all. I stand as proof. Okay, continue.
Thank you. So I think just like connecting to myself and remembering breath and like sitting in that humble space so I don't shut myself out.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about that even as like I'm saying that out loud, like how often am I really in that practice? And like every day I'm really trying to not shut myself out, to listen, to breathe, and again to just continue to breathe and remain anchored and
Yeah.
know that like there's lots of transitioning winds happening around us, but like I myself am capable of everything, right? Like that we are our everything, and that's okay too, because I think especially as women, we don't give ourselves permission to be our own everything
Mm-hmm.
and let that really blossom and transcend kind of like everyone else around us, and
Yeah.
transcend in a good way, because everyone's going to like elevate as we lift, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
light attract other lights.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. I think you bring up a very interesting point when it comes to ego and what about what about this mind racing is actually my ego?
Mm,
What is valid and like efficient for like practical life? I don't know.
yeah.
Um, so that's a very interesting like topic. I feel like in that I feel like my ego attaches to social constructs a lot.
Yes.
um Playing like, oh, you have to play hard to get when you're texting and calling somebody, you have to like be skinny and not eat carbs and like work out every day so you have like a certain shape and you fit into a certain shape.
Yeah.
And I feel like the racing of my mind is like attaches to that and cannot survive without that. And
Mm-hmm.
so for me, what's also been very helpful is identifying the construct and actually putting myself in the end goal of whatever my ego is pushing for. For
Yeah.
example, if I'm like stressing because like he hasn't texted me, which has been a big one. I hope he doesn't watch this. It's been a big one this past week. Um, and I'm like, then I stop to think like reasonably, and
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I don't really like. I would be so I like my space. Like I wouldn't want to be like texting all day or like talking on the phone for 4 hours every day. Like I don't have that kind of time. Like
Would you
you
do
know.
love? Yeah.
And so when I start to see like this is just a construct of like I have to play hard to get, so I can't text him myself, and like it's just like I really like I don't want that. I don't want to like be hearing from him every minute. That's exhausting.
Yeah.
Um so then when I identify that it's just a construct playing in my head and it's
Mm-hmm.
not what like Luciana Garcia really wants, it's like okay, I can chill now. Same
Yeah.
thing, and I feel like this applies for like so many people. Same thing with our body image.
Yeah.
Like I have spent so much thought and so much energy in wanting to be fit a certain shape,
Mm-hmm.
and at some point I started to realize like I started to put myself in the position of being in that shape.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what would it do for me? Like I am healthy. I am in a weight that works for me. I eat what I love, and like and if I had to deprive myself
Mm-hmm.
from that and I got to like fitting that shape, I would be miserable. And the like mentation would only attach itself to something else, like, oh, you can't have 20 almonds, how dare you have 25, that's too many almonds, instead of attaching itself to like a donut, like
Yeah.
the construct is won't heal by like getting to a certain result.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah, I feel like that's also important when it comes to like seeking peace of mind,
Well, it's like,
identifying.
yeah, I mean, part of that is control too, right? Like ego loves to control. And part of like taking control is letting go of control. Like that's something that I'm like coming into as well. And I'm watching my partner also kind of come into. And like I'm totally with you, Luciana. Like I feel like I just started like liking my face. Like today I put makeup on because I was like, okay, it's been like 6 months since I've like been on a screen. In this way, right? And so it's just
Yeah.
like this for me, and I was like I haven't like dug into this side for a while, like it might be nice, but before that I was like really dependent on this social construct of like getting ready and like what it means to get ready, and like part of that getting ready I was like losing my sense of what my face was like and what my natural markings were, or like I had gotten some like new freckles and moles and I just like had ignored them because I was covering them up, right? Instead of
Mm.
just like honoring the fact that like my body is changing and transforming and aging and regenerating. Like that's a thought that I should be like honoring myself for, versus like this, like you said, this social construct of like this is how everyone sees Paige every day, let me make sure I like hold up that sense of Paige.
Let me make sure I don't make them uncomfortable with changing how I.
I look, yeah, how I
Yeah,
look, which is
yeah,
crazy. In that, I was like, I don't think I like remembered what I look like, right? Like, what are all of these? Who is this? You know, it's
yeah.
awesome. It's like it was like an element of self discovery again the last 6 months.
Definitely. That is so beautiful. That is so beautiful. Like the being quarantined has also helped me a lot with that, just because I start to see what I do naturally
Yeah,
without having an event.
yeah,
So like I do like I dress up, but like I put on clothes that I like and everything every day, and I put on lipstick every day too. I don't really wear a lot of makeup ever. And
yeah,
so I'm like, okay, this is me. This is what makes me feel beautiful. And this is what I do no matter who surrounds me.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
so the
I,
pandemic has been, and the lockdown has been very interesting in that sense for me too. That's really cool that you bring it up. Do
I love
you
to hear that.
have you changed anything in how, in what, like, your getting ready routine is?
I have been so much more thoughtful
Mm-hmm.
getting out of bed, like thinking about how do I want to feel today, and just being like, yeah, today is a joyful day and I'm going to feel joy today. And like that mentality of just like not necessarily waking up thinking about what the to-do list is or where I have to be in the evening or what I need to like make sure I have prepped in my bag, like that logistical part where it's just like becomes super noisy, especially if you live in an urban city, right? Like I'm in New York
Mm.
City. It's wild here. Like so many things are like take me away from self. Like when I first moved here, I thought the only way I can describe to people what I'm missing is that like I can't create a space for myself. Like I can't
Mm.
create space for what I want to think about in this one moment. Like it feels impossible. And that felt so heavy, like the first
Yeah.
couple of years I lived here. And then the last 6 months has been incredible for me to be able to, like you said, make decisions that are just for me. Like what's my routine? What do I wake up to in the morning? What do I want to maybe thumb through? Do I not want to organize something? Do I want to organize something? Like I just had so much agency in what my day looked like. Like
Yeah.
I like in complete control over all the things that I'm intentionally doing during the day. And I
Mm.
think that intentionality I didn't have before. I was just doing without really thinking about the why, the what's, the hows, the does it make me happy? How does it make me feel? Nothing. Like that has not
Mm-hmm.
existed in 6 months, which is incredible.
Yeah. That is so powerful, and I am so glad we're on this journey. Like
Yeah, me too.
and yeah, and I'm so glad you've managed to find space for yourself. Like you all, and it's something that you always bring up in conversation, and I think it's so beautiful. Like holding space.
Yeah.
Um, it's so simple, but so powerful. So okay, to wrap it up a little bit, what are some ways to incorporate in which you incorporate, like, you unify the three dimensions of holistic health, like mind, body, and spirit?
Yeah. Uh, okay. So I'm going to use an analogy because it's something that
Mm-hmm.
was taught to me that I just was like, it like changed my mindset.
I
So
love these
yeah,
moments. Okay,
here you go.
I'm
So
excited.
one is just this idea of like us being made up of the elements, right? Like we are all the elements in one, in a sense, because we exist in the earth and we're part of the ecosystem. So who we are, think of us as being like boiling water. Like bodies are predominantly water for the most part. So just think of us as being water, and think about the energy that it takes to like create heat, meaning like you're infusing energy into like your being and who you are, and that's the fire. So fire heats up the water, it boils, and then the steam is spirit energy. So like you're being released from like who you are into a different type of energy that is steam, and it's like it's here, right? Like it goes where it must, and like you can kind of see it. But like if you were the water, you would feel your steam, right? And other people may not feel it the same way, but it's yours. Like this is your ecosystem, and then you're released into everyone else's ecosystem. And what happens when we're dehydrated? So think about if the fire is burning an empty kettle, right? Like if you have nothing left, like you're not who you are, the pot is empty, there's no more water, it's going to burn hot and there's not going to be any steam.
Mm-hmm.
So there's going to be this like energy and infusion of heat everywhere. It's like it's just the world that we live in. There's energy everywhere. But if we ourselves are not full and like maintaining the water, then like we're not going to have enough left for spirit, because that's the steam, right? Like that's the last part of like where we are, or and that all goes together, right, into an ecosystem. So I thought that was like really beautiful to just think about
Yeah.
what happens if you fire if you burn a hot kettle. It hurts, right? And
Oh
like
my God.
it
Yeah. Yeah. You have such a good brain on your shoulders. I love you. You're amazing.
I'm just absorbing it all. Like as much as goodness that can stick to me, I want it.
Yeah.
But like, I think
Yeah.
about, like, am I empty or am I full? And like, that made like, is the glass half empty or half full? And I was like, no,
Oh
no.
no, I just emptied out my water. We need to
I know,
we need to go get some. And I'm like a puddle of sweat.
yeah. I do that too, but it's like, that's beautiful. Like, and that to me is like, how do you incorporate all three dimensions? Is like, you're conscious of the outside heat and energy, and like how you can leverage that in order to like create a stronger spirit. And like, our bodies is just this vessel that's here, and like, what can we do to liberate and protect and learn more about it and listen to it? And how do we detach from those things that we know are toxic? And how do we create like healthy attachments that are out of love, like
Yeah.
everything out of love? And I think like we have tons of support in doing that. We just often don't know what to listen for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is such a beautiful analogy, and it makes so much sense for me.
Yeah,
And thank you for that. Thank you.
it resonated with me too. I was like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
love.
wow. Can you tell us like a little bit of what you've been working on lately and how the people listening or watching can stay in touch with you or reach out to you if they have any questions, I guess.
Yes. And before I go into that, I want to especially thank you for asking me to spend this time talking about myself, because it's something I don't do and I haven't done previously, and I'm really working on doing. So thank you for holding space for me, Luciana.
Of
And
course. Thank you for holding space for me.
yeah, always.
Yay!
And with that being said, the idea of like what I'm currently going into is like me and the love of my life are starting a nonprofit. It's called the Warrior Sanctuary. It's actually already started. We have a location. It's in West Village in New York City. It is a healing collective. So who or what comprises the healing collective is just anything that's kind of like non-traditional healing space. So meditation, guided meditations, yoga, Reiki, communal dialogues. It's a music studio. We do plant medicine and like herbalism there. So it's just a space for people, especially that like are gifted, right? Like we want other people to share their innate gifts with the world, be able to have a space to do that and bring people into it. And this work is hard, right? Like I think talking about ourselves, talking about spirituality, working through our traumas, like that is hard work. And we want people to be able to have a space to do that work and to
Mm-hmm.
be accepted, and like for that space to be held, because it's not easy, and we
Yeah.
know that. And it's a journey also, right? Like you don't just like have a epiphany moment and you woke up like this, like maybe, but how do you continue to engage with the world?
Yeah.
And that's what the Warrior Sanctuary is for. And that's going to be our big venture for this year. And then also just working on Soul Beats Body, which is yoga and meditation and music. And that's kind of like my gift to the world that I'm working on sharing. And that's it.
That is so wonderful. I feel like holding space for each other is your motto in life. Or yeah.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to use that.
Definitely. Yeah. You do it really well. It's important to you. You're passionate about it. And you know, it's and you hold space for yourself too. Like it's really inspiring to watch unfold.
Thank
Um
you.
I
Yeah.
am so excited about what the warriors that you bring forth and encourage can come
Yes.
up with. This is amazing.
Yes.
Um, thank you so much, Paige, and thank you everyone for listening. This was amazing. I love talking to you, and if you listened and liked our conversation, feel free to like, subscribe, all that stuff. You know it. I'm Luciana Garcia, and this is Social Saturdays with Paige Clarke. Happy Saturday, everyone. Have a great, great, great weekend. Rock and love. Bye. Mwah.